Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, we're talking with Mitch Davies of Sand and Stone Landscaping. And Mitch is a landscaper from Adelaide in South Australia. And he's been working for himself for about 6 years, but he's learned quite a bit along the way, and he shares a bit of his knowledge in this journey, especially the later half of the episode. So he talks about a bad experience he had, which has got some good lessons in there about trusting your gut when you're dealing with clients, and also for clients when they're dealing with a landscaper. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not. And you also talk about how he makes, and this is general for most people, you can make a bigger profit on smaller jobs. So he does work on a couple of larger ones, and like most people, wanting to work on those big, juicy projects, but you can work out better financially just ticking along on the smaller one. So we discussed that as well. And one of my favourite parts was right at the end, where he talks about in one of his goals for this year is to invest more time in training his staff. So not so much just ticking over jobs as they come in and getting the staff to do something without teaching them why they're doing it. He's actually going to take the time and teach them why they're doing it and how to do it properly. So when you say it like that, it makes sense to be a normal thing to do, but unfortunately the way things are, everyone's pretty busy. So there's a balance between trying to get stuff done and trying to train his staff, but he's going to make a concerted effort to teach his staff, which I think is a great thing and something I'll be looking to do as well for this year. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Mitch Davies. Mitch, thank you very much for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. The first question I've got for you is how it all started for you and how you started in the industry.
It's a long and varied answer, and everyone's is and everyone's different. I have been working for myself now for 6 years, but I've been landscaping for 12, I reckon, effectively since I left high school. So a little while now, but it certainly wasn't the plan to be a landscaper. I was actually meant to go into the Air Force of all things. Passed all my tests, did all the sort of stuff I needed to do, did all the interviews, got in, no dramas. Unfortunately had a pretty serious car accident at 16. Fractured my skull, had a brain injury and bleeding in the brain, all that sort of stuff. So they blacklist you pretty quickly because then you're a liability. So that was during my final year of high school. Sort of lost the plot a little bit because you're too young to sort of deal with the emotions that you're probably experiencing, and everything that I sort of worked towards for, a lot of years, sort of came down crashing pretty quickly. And yeah, just sort of not spiral or anything drastic, but definitely wasn't interested in doing a whole lot. After that, you think life's pretty unfair, which is quite funny when you get a bit older and you look back at experiences like that. But I sort of finished high school and didn't do much. I was working, but not really doing anything. And then I sort of did vintage in a winery. So I was growing up in a wine region down in Adelaide. So that was sort of the in thing, go and just pick grapes and work on harvesters and stuff. You get pretty good money for a 17-year-old working through the night. I mean, back then, you're probably on 28 bucks an hour. And you think,
yeah, right.
At that age, you're working all night, but you don't care because you're like, well, I've got more money than all my mates. Night shift's hard, but it teaches you to work. So I'd been working since I was 14 anyway through school, but it was a good experience. And then that ended and I kind of just had enough money to sit around and be a little bit uninspired. And I think it went about 6 months of just cruising because you don't have any bills and you're living at home and sort of just doing whatever you want. And then I think the old man sort of had a bit of enough of it and said, look, we've got to get you a job, mate. So I applied for a landscaping apprenticeship. There was an ad in the paper, the local paper, and went to the interview and got that. Remember vividly, I reckon, one of the questions he asked me, he said, well, why do you want to be a landscaper? I sort of said, well, I really like being outside. I guess I can work the rest out from there. So it was pretty good. I did that. Unfortunately, I didn't stay with that company fortunately, I didn't stay with that company for very long. They were sort of an apprentice machine more than anything, using it for the funding and doing, not a great deal of training. and the training provider was pretty haphazard, and it wasn't your traditional style of apprenticeship, and I wasn't getting much out of it. I was sort of driving maybe an hour and a half from home every day, for a 7 o'clock start, and then sort of just, wasting time for $8 an hour. And then how did it happen? That's right. I think my mum was working at a truck driving school, just in the office. And Josh from Landscape Techniques was putting his boys through there, and they just got talking and whatever. And then he said, tell him to come in for an interview. And I did. And then I left my apprenticeship and went to work for Josh for a couple of years, which is, you couldn't have asked for better in Adelaide, I don't think. Vastly different back then to what he is now. They've worked exceptionally hard over 20, 25 years to get where they are now. And Adelaide's a really hard market for that. But I got a really good grounding of education with those guys. And a lot of the guys I worked with then, we're all sort of competing against each other now. It's just funny, and we all get along. But Josh is a product of his own success. He creates so many good guys. And yeah, we're all sort of doing our own thing, which everyone thinks they can do. But that's good. And so I worked there for a couple of years. He actually sacked me because they, at the time, didn't have enough work, which sounds funny now. So that was right in the transition from smaller residential, doing a bit of commercial stuff before they were sort of doing the high-end stuff they're doing now. And I think the work was hard to get, and I was probably the least qualified. And there was no hard feelings. He actually got me a job with another landscape company. He said, well, I can't help you at the moment. But he got me a job with one of his friends, and I was there for 2 years and doing probably small to medium residential stuff. And he was really good. It was just him and I. So just had to learn really fast because he sort of had his list of expectations and there wasn't anyone else to do it. So did that for a couple of years, and then I thought I might leave landscaping because I wasn't sure that was what I wanted to do. Sort of wanted to travel Europe and do all the sort of stuff you do when you're in your young, early 20s and that sort of stuff. And I decided to study instead. So I left landscaping and I went and studied building and construction. So I went and got my diploma in building and construction, worked for a couple of commercial building contractors, building high rises and that sort of stuff. Got sacked again, which was good. So one of the companies that I worked for got a new management structure and they sacked all junior supervisors because that's not the direction of the new general manager wanted to go. So that was okay. I still get along with those guys now, which is obviously the company changed. And then I went and worked for another building company and they went into receivership. So this is all going very well. And then sort of fell in the market of not being able to get a job for another little while as a building supervisor because I didn't have a lot of experience. So I've only been doing a couple of years and trying to get in the doors hard. And Adelaide's not very big. And then just working for landscapers here and there just to get some money through the door. And I kind of got sick of that after a while and decided I'll use what I learned, for those years landscaping and what I learned in the building industry and to sort of, have a bit of a crack myself and see how we go. Didn't have any money, didn't have any financial backing, but you can sort of make up for it pretty quickly if you work hard. So it's funny, and my partner will give me shit about it all the time. There's, funny little anecdote. I had a green Commodore sedan and a borrowed trailer and a Bunnings gift voucher. And that was literally it. I think I was down to my last $100. And my parents gave me a gift voucher and my dad lent me his trailer and said, well, there you go. Go and work it out. So I went and got my builder's license, did all that. And they just went door knocking, really. Just started bashing down doors of suppliers and whatever. So just give me any crap. Like, I don't care if it's a grandma's garden path or some edging or, fixing, I don't care. Let's just do it. So I just did all these tiny little jobs, and then worked out pretty quickly you can't do it by yourself. So got a staff member, I reckon, 3 months in, and he's still with me now, so that's nice. And we've sort of been through the highs and the lows and the tantrums and the everything together. And he was a bricklayer, so he was a good friend of mine. He's a bricklayer, and he finished his trade. And the week after he finished his trade, he came and worked for me, and just trusted that we would work it out. And I think we have. 6 years later, I think we're still doing okay. So, just got stuck in basically and just worked every second of every day for a long time until it sort of got a bit easier.
How old were you when you started the business?
23.
Yeah, right. So you packed in a lot before that, at such a young age.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I started work casually when I was 14 while I was still in high school. So I've always sort of had a job. So that'll be, what am I, 29 now. Been working for 15 years at least.
So when you went and worked for Landscape Techniques, did you carry on the apprenticeship there, or did you just working?
No, they weren't doing it. It was just just labouring basically. And at the time, it was double what I was getting paid as an apprentice. And you're young and you're doing whatever. Obviously sorted out all that now. Recognised prior learning, the diploma of construction and builder's license and all that sort of stuff. The traineeships in SA still really not worth the paper they're written on, I don't think.
Is that the same as an apprenticeship?
Yeah, it's an apprenticeship. Just there was a big push a couple of years ago, recently, with the apprenticeships and trying to create new training providers, because the guys that have sort of been doing it, it's just been a money maker for them. So you're not sort of getting the quality of staff you would expect to get out of them. And then there's a company here, Outside Ideas, which I'm sure you've seen and heard of. I think Aaron, he bought out a company in Victoria now. I think he's got 200 staff, something crazy. He started his own training organisation in Adelaide, and that's looked like the most promising sort of education any of the young kids will get. So looks a bit more hands-on and a bit more regimented, whereas the stuff that's sort of been going on, or even I've put some apprentices through, the trainers come out to site every now and then, they go to TAFE every now and then. It's not really, you could fudge your way through and never really learn anything. So it's a shame. There has to be something to sort it out. So I think there's a lot of pressure put on employers.
It's improved a lot since I went to TAFE. It was useless then. So back when I went, it was landscapers, turf apprentices, horticultural apprentices. Everyone was just all in the one, off nursery staff. They were all in the one class because there weren't enough people to be doing it. So there certainly weren't any specified landscaping classes. Now there's different landscape teachers at the TAFE that I send the guys to, but it's still like so I didn't learn much about landscaping at TAFE, and now they teach landscaping at TAFE, and my guys aren't teaching me much. So it does seem I could teach them most of what or everything that they're learning at school. So, but
they just got that piece of paper, I guess. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I've put on a qualified guy before, so he had his piece of paper and he was useless. So it doesn't mean a lot.
I've connected with a couple of young guys from Ballarat and Geelong. Been talking to them for a few years. Low maintenance landscaping, LTK. I think Andy Mason, when he did the World Skills Challenge, I think the apprenticeship program over there looks pretty cool. They're just coming up. From what I can tell, their system looks better than ours. Well, your system looks better than ours. So the quality of work those boys are producing at a younger age than I was seems pretty good. But it might just be the personalities too. So
yeah. So what was the difference like between the work that Landscape Techniques were doing and then the guy you went to after that? They're doing the same kind of work. It was just a smaller team.
Yeah, at that stage, I would say that the guy I went and worked for was probably doing higher end stuff than LT, which is pretty laughable now. But, you know, it was he and I, and we're probably doing, and I don't know the numbers, but if I had to guess, we're probably doing a couple $100,000 projects, just the two of us.
Yeah, right.
You know, pretty massive stuff. Obviously, you've got a team of subbies, the earthworks and the, you know, carpenters and that sort of stuff, but, you know, we were sort of managing that. And yeah, it's good grounding just to sort of get into just to see what it's like in the eastern suburbs. Adelaide, you know, the eastern suburbs is probably where the nicest stuff gets done. And it's pretty familiar now. We're there, you know, I was there at the beginning and I'm still there now, but, you know, not having had that, if I were just sort of, I'm from the south of Adelaide originally, if I'd sort of hung around there with the guys that are sort of kicking it around there, it's a bit, you know, more laid back, and they'd rather go for a surf, and not the same skill level, not the same desire. And so probably pretty fortunate with the couple of landscapers that I have worked for.
Yeah, it makes a massive difference. Because I remember when I was talking to Sam Colley, he said he worked for Bruce Winstanley, and he was reeling off the names of the guys who worked for him at the same time, and they've all got like high-end landscaping businesses for themselves, so it can't just be a coincidence.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think, well, Josh is really good at holding on to his staff now too. No one ever leaves unless they're doing their own stuff, so the culture is really good. You know, there's guys that were there before I was there, they're still there. So, you know, it's just a really good environment. I imagine it still is. I, you know, chat to Josh when I can. You know, life gets in the way, but, you know, we still get along pretty well. And I'm really happy for what he's doing. So
how did you, so you mentioned that you went to, was it the landscape supply yards to start drumming up work early days? Like what other ways did you start getting it?
Oh, just hassling people, really. Landscape supply yards, just flooding social media with anything I could take a photo of. I look back now, I'm like, but you know, you do it. Making up random little brochures on, you know, Vistaprint, dropping them around, putting stickers everywhere, just being a pest, I think. Even got to the point I had this idea I actually made up. I put it on Facebook. I said, who wants a hoodie? And I reckon I sold, I don't know, 30, 35 hoodies with Sandstone Landscape on it. And then, you know, I'd get messages, oh, I saw this person at the shop's wearing this, and you know, it was just like, just being an absolute pest, basically. I think in the beginning, the work ethic was phenomenal. I look back on it now and I think I probably was working it out on the job for a lot of stuff. You know, pretty inexperienced. You think you know a lot until you don't.
So how long after putting on the first guy did you put? Because I assume he wasn't an apprentice because he's already qualified bricklayer. So when did you put on a first apprentice?
So Liam came on and he was a bricklayer, and he was just labouring for me, I guess. And I think the first apprentice, so if that was October 15, I reckon must have been a year, I reckon. 6 months to a year. No, that's right. I had a friend from soccer contact me and said, I'm working at a local school, there's kids doing work experience, do you want one? And I said, oh, not really. And it turned out the dates lined up with Liam was going to Bali for a week. And I was like, oh, yeah, you know, I'll come and meet a kid. You'll know, oh, you can help me out for a week and we'll go from there. So got this kid. Still get along with him really well now. He doesn't work for me, but I'll always have a soft spot for him. When I met this kid, scared little 16-year-old, you know, doesn't look in the eye, still wears hoodies, that sort of stuff. And I'm like, all right, we'll have a go. Met his parents, and he did work experience. And then maybe a week later, went back to school. I ended up giving some money for it because I felt bad. I made money that week. So, I reckon a week later he called me and he said, "Can I have a job?" I said, "What do you mean, mate? You're at school. You got to finish." He was in year 10, I reckon. I said, "Nah, mate, you've got to finish. You got to do something. You can't just leave in year 10." I said, "Do you go to school every day, or have you got 3 days or whatever?" He said, "Oh, I think I've got Tuesdays and Fridays." I reckon he had, like flexes, because I don't think he was not too into school, but he had, empty day. I said, "Right, you can have a job on 2 days, and you can come and do, work casually or whatever. If you're not at school, you can come and work for us here. And if you're still keen at the end of the year and you finish at least year 10, or it might have been 11, I don't know. Anyway, at least if you finish that year, then we'll talk about it." So obviously got to the end of the year and he was pretty excited. And I said, "Oh, all right, chat to your parents." And he ended up leaving school. He did his trade with us for 3.5 years or whatever it was. He left, went and, maybe thought the grass was a little greener. Ended up coming back for a bit. This is not even that long ago. I think maybe a year ago he came back just for a bit, and he's decided to spread his wings again, but that's okay. So I'd say, so within a year I had two, one apprentice and one labourer, and that's right. It's all flooding back now. I haven't thought about this stuff for ages. And then my partner at the time, her brother was going to Bible college of all things, and he's pretty handy. We got along really well. And he sort of was like, "Oh, I need some work, but I can't really do anything around Bible college and whatever." And he was super into plants. Like, he knows more about plants than I do. And we ended up creating a mowing round and a maintenance sort of round. And he just condensed all his sort of clients into one day. So, or 1 day or 2 days or whatever it was. And just sort of, bought a trailer and bought some tools and, go off and mow some lawns. And it was pretty weird there for a little while, sort of just doing some stuff. And then ended up finishing Bible school. Worked for us for a few years, and now he's doing a mission in Peru. So that's always what he wanted to do. And I guess we've sort of fluctuated over the years. I think the most we've ever had might have been 7 boys. We went back to 2, and I think we're at 6 at the moment, and it's a really, really good 6. Like, it's the best group we've ever had.
What's it made up of?
It's an eclectic bunch. So we've got, obviously, Liam still there, the bricklayer. We've got Daniel, who's from Sydney, who's moved over, worked for a couple of high-end landscapers over here. We met, got along, and I was sort of in his ear for about a year before he came over, I reckon, because staff is really hard to get in Adelaide. And I wasn't necessarily poaching, but, I definitely wanted him. And he's outstanding. So we've got, Liam and Daniel are probably our core guys. And then we've got one of our boys is out of the army. So he's, done a trade with the army, done a lot of stuff. He's older, he's 40. So just an old sort of switched on head, knows a lot, just heads up all the maintenance. And then we've got a couple of, young guys. I say young, they're only a couple of years younger than me, but a couple of young guys, not tradesmen, but sort of pushing. Yeah, it's hard because, you say they're not tradesmen, but, you probably wouldn't know it watching what they can do, if that sort of makes sense. One's really good on the machine, so we've sort of got like trying to maybe have like a little bit of a machine division and then a landscaping crew, so sort of splitting everyone up, but it's just a really good bunch of boys, I think. Everyone works for each other. If anyone has a question, no one's afraid to ask, so it doesn't matter it doesn't matter. There's no swinging of, egos or whatever, which is hard because I probably employ on personality first. Yeah. I reckon you can probably teach the rest. So as much as you'd love 5 fully qualified tradesmen with their bits and pieces and their paper. Well, if you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, I don't want you. You know what I mean? So yeah, we're sort of building. I'd say we're probably homegrown. Like only one of them has ever worked for another landscaper, and that's Daniel. The only landscaping the other ones have ever done is with me. So, which is nice because there's no bad habits. But yeah, it's just just a good bunch of boys.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference because the clients aren't going to care if they're awesome workers, but treat them like your stereotypical tradie and just swear and
we
make
get
a
so
mess of
many
the place.
compliments on the, get so many compliments on the boys. It's the best. Everyone's really personable. A couple of our boys have worked in hospitality for a long time, and you can sort of tell the way they talk to the clients. Realistically, I want you to talk to the clients the way you talk to my partner or me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just, if they've got a question, answer it. If you can't answer it, direct them to me, but be polite, play a game with the kid, do whatever. Leave the site tidy every single day. Like, that's your house as much as it's their house for that period of time. So, no, it's all good. I got very lucky. And a lot of the stuff I haven't had to instill, obviously. So it's easy a lot of the time. So the jobs are hard, but the boys aren't.
And when you said you got the machine divisions, that mean you got your own machines?
Yeah, only a couple so far. So we're sort of dabbling. So, got a little excavator. Liam had never driven an excavator until maybe a year and a half ago. And it's like a part of him. Like, he's an absolute freak, what I've seen him do with that thing. And we've got a little mini loader, so a track mini loader. I wasn't sure how we were going to go, whether we were just going to supplement the landscaping with the machines or whatever. But I think now it's quickly progressing that we're actually quite good at small, tight access landscaping. Earthworks and things like that. It's funny, we've got a job coming up in 2 weeks, I reckon. We're craning the excavator into the backyard to do someone's job. I really thought about what I was buying. So they're two machines, they can both fit through PA gates down the side of the house. Really focusing on the small stuff. I don't want to buy a 10-ton excavator. I don't care.
What size is the one that you've got?
Just a 1.7.
Yep.
And it's a zero swing, so it hasn't got the big bum on it. So it has its limitations, but I think if you're smart about it, you can get a lot out of it. We're looking at probably buying a truck, just waiting for the right one to pop up. But I think, we'll do, we've sort of got this bit of a pattern now where, we've got a couple of guys running through jobs, doing all the dig out, the base work, the preparation, everything, leaving a clean slate, and then we've got the landscape boys sort of cruising through and putting it all back together. So it's sort of flowing nicely. I did use subbies for a very long time, and it sort of got to the point where maybe their schedules weren't lining up as well as I would like. I'm not difficult to work for, but, if you need to be somewhere, it'd be easier if we were doing it. Basically, I can dictate to them rather than, someone else is running their own stuff. So we had exceptional subcontractors, but it was sort of probably getting a little bit hard, and we maybe outgrew them a little bit. So we bought our own, slowly buying our own stuff. I get a bit scared about spending too much. Not that I have an issue spending money, but I don't want to invest a couple of $100,000 if I don't need to. Like, as far as, we use the excavator and machines every single day, but I was very apprehensive about it initially. Not that it's a great deal of money, but it sounds like it is at the start. So, but no, it's worked out really well.
Did you pay for them up front, or did you?
No, so they're on finance, but I did the numbers on it. And realistically, I think for what we pay for 2 or 3 days hire, you're getting them for a month. So, you'd always find a specific reason to hire the machines, but now that you've got them all the time, you're just doing stuff you'd never even think about. going to hire one for, even if, you're not having a lazy day, but, you're filling wheelbarrows with it, or it doesn't matter. Like anything that keeps the boys' bodies fresh, because how hard the work is. I try and aid it as much as we can. So, we had pallets to move today so we could start a job, put the forks on the Toro, move the pallets out of the way, get on with it. Otherwise you'd be hand unstacking and mucking around, that sort of stuff. So
yeah, I saw that.
Really happy with it.
So what weight, like what is the Toro machine that you got, and what weight was that pallet, do you reckon, that you were moving?
That pallet, I'd say it was on the too heavy side, but that's okay. I would say that pallet was probably 500 kilos. The capacity on the Toro, it says the tipping weight's 1.2, so that's what'll make it bloody fall over. But realistically, they only want you to put 450 kilos in the bucket. So Matt, that was driving that in that photo, he was a storeman for a scaffolding company. So he spent his days just doing things on forklifts that you probably shouldn't do. And I was watching him today. I said, "Are you all right?" He's like, "I don't know why you're worried. Like, I'm absolutely fine." And he's just, getting it done. And so, yeah, I mean, I've got trenches and augers and rippers and grabbers and just trying to save the boys. I think there's more efficient ways to do things. It's quicker too, and it's safer. We have had one incident in the past where an employee got injured building a sleeper wall. Absolute mistake, but they happen. And never again, So at the end of the day, it's just a job, especially to the boys. So I just want to carefully invest sort of where I can and not try and overcapitalize. Some guys I've seen, they've been in business a couple of years, and I'd say they're probably, they might have $500,000 worth of stuff already. I'm like, oh, it's a lot of pressure. Especially with the kids now as well. They're so young. I don't want to be thinking about work while I'm doing bath time, or worried about, is money going to come in this week, because I know that I've got this amount of loan going to, so try and keep the stress level low.
Yeah, especially even with COVID happening, when people didn't know whether they're going to be able to work or not, and you got all those loan repayments you got to make. So
we got unbelievably lucky in SA. I think people are getting upset with the government now, but I think it's only because they don't really appreciate how good we've had it for 2 years. Like, I would say we've had two lockdowns. Victoria, Sydney, I don't even know how the boys got through it. I don't. We had 2 lockdowns. One of them was really annoying because we were doing a school 4 hours away. So we didn't know if we were going to be able to come back. So we had to try and just fit every single tool into, we had until midnight to get home, which is the time wasn't the drama. I think they let us know at 1 o'clock or whatever. But, just to get home and sit home for, I think it was only 10 days in the end. The uncertainty of going back would have scared me a lot if I was in a different state. So I think we had another one, must have been in the middle of winter last year, I reckon. And that caught me at a really bad time as far as jobs open. But I don't know whether there's ever a good time. Like, I think it's just, it happened. But no, I think we're pretty fortunate. I had to let one guy go, but he's back now. I didn't pull the trigger too early, but I was scared. I think we all were. But he's come back, and probably better for him too, because he's come back better. So, but yeah, just try and limit the stress level.
Talking about stress levels, I think one of the first things I saw you do was the Adelaide show garden that you did with Tim from Space Capital.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
That was a crazy time in my life. I had recently broken up with my partner of 3 years, I think, at the time. I just bought a house. Build a show. I'd never met Tim until that sort of process. We got together through the Master Landscapers Association. We are very different people. Like, I love him, like, no dramas, but we are, I mean, you know, Tim. We're different. And he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But we think differently. So that show garden was a battle. Not so much. He was great. The design was great. He was well organised. I think that because it was just him, and I think I had 4 guys there. So my urgency level was probably a little bit more because obviously you're paying wages. But that's okay. That worked really well. I don't think either of us got any work out of it. I think I maybe got 1, 2. Didn't win. Well, I think we got a commendation, you know.
Yeah.
I think the show garden was great. I think we alternated. I think we both sat there for a week just talking to people for 8 hours a day. And then we go and have a beer afterwards and just do it all again the next day. But that was a crazy time. I'd do it again, definitely. Like,
really?
It's nothing like, it's nothing like Mifkus.
So you've been there, haven't you, to Mifkus?
Yeah. Yep. I went, I reckon the year after I did one, I went to Mifkus. The year after he won, I reckon. No. Yeah, it must have been, I reckon. Yeah, the year after he won his little garden. That's crazy impressive. Like, just knowing the bloke and how he got that done, I'm like, what the fuck? Just so good. Works hard. So, I think I had dreams of grandeur and I'd, you know, do Mifkus one day, but I'm like, I'm not good at design. I build things really well. I don't have a creative eye. I don't pretend to. You know, I've seen yours. You were there the year I went. It was the water feature, I reckon. That was the year. The water, because Tim was laying in it. I reckon there was a photo, and he was.
I can't remember which year, because I thought
Yeah,
Tim was there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I reckon it was. Was there a Japanese bloke involved? No.
Oh, yeah, the big one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of the boutique gardens, but yeah. So I think that was 2017, I think.
Yeah. Time is blurry. But yeah, I went there and went, I'm never doing it. No matter how good I think I am, I'm not that good. So it was nice though. It's good to see it. Very impressive from all involved. Met some really cool people when I was there. You know, Phil Withers, a couple other boys, you know, Candio, just chat, you know, just chatting basically. But yeah, it was really cool. So,
yeah, it's an awesome place to be around people because people there love what they do. So it's good to
everyone's
talk to
friendly.
people.
Everyone and you know, everyone's got time for everyone. It doesn't matter if they know who you are or like it doesn't, you know, we're a tiny little mob from Adelaide. You just chat shit. It's all just dirt in a different place. No, it's lovely, and you know, you'll have beers and whatever. So
is it similar in Adelaide with the Master Landscapers? Is that do they have many events that everyone gets around?
Yes, Master Landscapers was going really well when we were there. We're not a part of it anymore.
No.
So we were involved when Inika was CEO. So a couple of years now, and she's obviously gone off to do her own thing. It's unfortunately probably not run in the way you'd want it to be. It's probably going to upset some people because I'm friends with some people on the board too. The intentions really dropped off for a little bit, and I think people's selfishness maybe jumped in. There was more. Everyone had their agenda, I think, for a little while, which ultimately isn't helping anybody. So, you know, it's meant to be a big, inclusive sort of, and it was, you know, there was not any sort of animosity or anything. Like, I've met some guys from there that I'll, you know, chat to, you know, every day. I don't think it necessarily does its job, and I don't know what they're like now. So I know they do run events, and they do workshops and things like that. For the guys that probably when I started, I would have needed more than I do now. So the boys that have worked for a couple of years for someone and they haven't really learned everything, because there's just things that you can't possibly learn until you're doing it for yourself. I think it's really valuable for that. And I hope that it's on the way up, but I don't pay attention to it now. I think Instagram's as good a tool for networking and expressing ideas and whatever. I mean, I know you and I sometimes just talk out of silliness, but, it's been a few years of just chat. And I've probably got a lot of guys from around the country. You just, chat a bit of stuff, chat to Hoppo every now and then. He's a funny bloke. He does well in his own right. I think we get along really well if we hung out. I think we're as cruisy as each other, and they do good work. So, just spitball some ideas. We're here doing this now. What's it like in Victoria? Is everyone pretty close?
Yeah. Yep. There's like anywhere, there's people who think that everyone's trying to take their jobs and steal their money. But
there's enough work out for everyone regardless.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd say 95% of the industry is awesome. So I
think it's different. I don't know whether if you were a plumber or a sparky, it'd be the same. I think that the landscaping community is it's nice. Building, I don't know whether builders go and hang out together. They're all trying to steal each other's jobs and it's a bit silly. But we're sort of in this weird little grey area where I guess we all secretly know that we have to, we do a lot more than other trades too. So it's sort of this little, I don't know, everyone helps everyone and just, get through, because some days are bloody hard.
And speaking of which, in terms of messaging each other on Instagram, I asked you about one of the paving jobs you did, because I haven't done one yet, about how long it took and that sort of thing with the Folletti paving that you did. How did that come about to get that in the first place?
That was a private job. That they just had a design. They thought they designed it themselves, really liked it. I think that's one of our best jobs ever. And it was tiny. I think the level of skill that the boys, so two boys did that job, Daniel and Liam. We had some help from Distinctive Gardens, Rob. I'm really good friends with Rob. He popped down and gave us a bit of a tutorial. And we've been friends for years, but I sort of popped out. So, that's sort of his bread and butter. I said, well, how I'm not going to sit here and try and work out how we should do this. You tell me how you would do it, and we're just going to do that. And the level of skill those boys put into that job, I would argue it's as good as some of Rob's stuff, and a lot better than probably most other stuff in Adelaide. And I wouldn't say that about a lot of our stuff. Like, our stuff's really good, but I think that what they did there in, the level changes and the direction changes, and the joint sizes and stuff, I was just blown away. Like, I don't think that I could have done what they did, and it was good to watch. So, and we're going to use the same method. We've got a job coming up. We're paving inside of a function centre. 45-degree herringbone red bricks, with grouted joints and tight joints, and we're going to use the exact same method that we did for the Folletti for that, because I think it'll work significantly better.
So what method is that?
So obviously you pour your slab and I know everywhere around the country is a bit different. We only wet lay and mortar on concrete. Well, I do. I know some guys have been doing it on rubble and that sort of stuff, but I just get a bit nervous. So pour a slab, waterproof the slab. And what the boys did was they set up their height bars either side. So they bolt into the slab their height bars and they move it as they need to go. Bonding agent on the slab, bonding agent on the bottom of the stone. So not glue. They make it a concoction of bonding agent cement, and then it's plaster sand, and you mix it dry, and then as you're tipping it out of the mixer, you're just misting it just to get it, a bit more pliable but not wet. And then when you go to install it, bonding agent, sand, bonding agent on the paver, you put it all in, where you want it, because you've already set it out anyway. You've got your piles of stone and your sizes. And then you just literally hit it to height, get your block of wood, get your mallet. You can't be wrong because the stone's inconsistent, but your height's your height. So, and you just do little sections. I think might have been doing, 0.5 meter by a meter sections at a time. Just tap, 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 tap. And it came out perfect. And then we just sand cement grouted it on top of that, just to give it a real, rustic look. I wasn't going to use the bag grout. So we used a bagged Adbri basic mortar mix, just because it's sort of a bit browner as well. And it just came out perfect. The clients are stoked. I don't know whether they appreciate it as much as I probably did. They never do, they sort of look at it, but they never really sort of get what went into it. I probably wouldn't do too many more meters than what we did. That was
How many was there?
It took a long time. I think only 40 in the end. I think on a bigger area it would be easier. I think they were quite confined. And obviously it took a long time. I would say their best day, they might have got 8 meters down. And I think that's probably really going for it.
I think that's pretty good for what they are.
Absolutely. And it's just the two boys, and I sort of let them go a little bit. Daniel's Italian, so he's got a little mugging at a coffee machine, and he's got his, towel on his head. He's just feeling comfortable doing, got his Frank Sinatra going, whatever. And just getting it done. So no, that one will stick in the memory banks. Even if I think if they don't work here, I'll remember that one. So
did you quote that?
Yeah, I did. So I was pretty, because I get along with Rob really well, I sort of just pinched his experience. I don't know if you've met Rob or Rob, but I think he's been around 25 years in Adelaide. Unique bloke, unreal landscaper. Just unreal. His knowledge base and the jobs that he does, which don't ever make it to social media. He doesn't care about that anymore. But, I've been to jobs and you're standing in the backyard and you're like, what? Who's got this much money? Just, swim up teppanyaki barbecues in the pool and just just craziness. Stuff that I appreciate but don't envy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think doing that job would stress me out way too much. But I can appreciate that he's done it and he's willing to do it.
And what do you do outside of work so you're not stressing too much?
I cook a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't I might say I stress a lot. I don't now. I think early in the piece I did. I cook a lot, so I try and make sure I'm home for the boys every night really early. Try and get home at 4. Dinner, bath time, and bed, playtime every day. And then sort of 6:30 time comes around, start the Weber up. It doesn't matter what I'm cooking. It might be a steak, might be ribs, whatever. Have a beer, listen to Triple M. I really try not to work past 4 o'clock ever. I'd like to spend time with my partner a lot. Do a lot of forward driving now. That's sort of a nice little hobby that I found. Expensive hobby. So I don't really do anything in halves. So, pretty passionate about that. Got into that pretty well, camping, trying to set up the family sort of car so I can take them all the way so they can sort of share the passion. I just try and be really practical with what I do and don't do as far as hobbies. I'd like to be trying and really be inclusive of the family, and just make sure that, I don't take a lot to chill out, but making sure that it's not, chilling out to the detriment of those guys. So, just find a little piece of happiness every day and you can go on with the next one. Doesn't matter how bad your day is. You're walking and you see that smile, doesn't matter. So,
yeah.
What about yourself?
My hobby is landscaping, so I'm pretty,
Nice.
That's lucky or not, but I love doing it. So.
You have to love it. You have to love it. And I love it too. I don't think I've had some exceptionally bad days and I've had some exceptionally bad experiences with landscaping too.
Yeah.
I'll be open and transparent, which it doesn't really bother me. We're pretty honest here. I've got one more payment to go on a court case. We got sued a couple of years ago, which is And you can say it's no fault of our own, which it isn't, to do with the work. The work is great. But some red flags with the client popped up at the start, and I ignored it, and I ignored it, and I ignored it, because I wanted to do the job, and ultimately it cost me a lot of money. And the builder cost them a lot of money too, because of that. And I think even then I had some it cost me a lot of money. I had some dark times, but I've never not wanted to landscape, I reckon. I wanted that situation to finish.
Yeah.
But it never made me not want to go to work the next day. It changed me, and it changed the way I do things, and it changed who I am, but it didn't take away the love, if that makes sense. Like, I love it, and you have to. Like, you know, in the middle of winter, you've got to love it. In the middle of summer, you've got to love it. When, you know, a job goes south and you don't make any money, you've got to love it. You know, like, shit happens.
Yeah, I certainly love it a lot more when it's 40 degrees than when it's 4 degrees. Not a big fan of the cold. But what sort of red flags do you reckon you'd see with hindsight that people might be able to look out for?
Just, I don't know, just the level of, just the way they would approach situations, how they would treat the builder. I sort of maybe thought, well, that wouldn't happen to me. Well, it did. The way they were second guessing the builder, and then ultimately obviously second guessing us. Yeah, I don't think it's hard. I don't know whether there was any bad intentions from the start, but it definitely ended up being that way. But it's a good learning experience. And I think I'm probably thankful for it, because I'm going to be in business longer than that took to pay off. So I think ultimately that cost me, when all said and done, probably about 70 grand, I reckon.
Jeez.
Yep. So, and I've got one more payment. One more. And we're actually going to have a bit of a party. It's going to be quite fun. So it taught me a lot about people, and just to trust your gut, because your gut is never wrong. Like, if you're starting to think it's going south, it's going south. And it's probably been going south before you've thought about it. So work it out quickly. Or if the client seems, and I don't want to be negative, but there's some jobs just seem too hard before you get there. And if they're too hard before they get there, they're going to be too hard. And it doesn't mean the job's hard, but you know what I mean? Like, some clients just aren't for you. And some clients just aren't for anybody too. You know, It doesn't matter if you went and did the job. I'd say you might have been a bit smarter about it, but I don't think it was personal.
No, like I've trusted my gut a lot, and it's paid dividends, because there's been a job where a client was paying invoices late, and then there was other parts we were supposed to do later on in that same job, and I walked away, and then found out that 2 other landscapers went there after us and pulled out as well for various reasons. So that was just getting I think there.
And a pretty good red flag is when you go to the job and the clients, you know, they advertise that they're shopping around, and it all starts with the money. You've started with the money, and not necessarily your end result, which might sound interesting, because we do vastly different landscaping. I think our stuff is more simple, and that's fine, and intentionally so. I think we do the key stuff really well, but we're not cheap anymore. I think we used to be. And I think if, you know, your first, and I'm okay with people not having massive amount of money. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to, but champagne tastes on beer budgets is a pretty good situation to get out of quickly, I think, because they're generally the ones that catch you out on little bits and pieces that you shouldn't be there doing anyway.
Yeah, I even though we're doing massive jobs now, it still blows me away how much money people spend on the landscaping. Because I still remember back in the early days, I couldn't believe people were spending $15,000 landscaping their front and backyard. Like, where's that money come from?
And now, and you know, and not to pry too hard, but you'd be doing jobs worth, you know, $250,000 more. You know,
our average is 100 now, which
Yep.
is insane. Because in 2015, when I got back into this second phase of business, it was around 20. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say like we've got a couple of jobs on the books now that are $250,000. And it's funny because I would make, and I said to one of the clients too, not to the client but to the builder, I said I would make more money being elsewhere for 8 weeks, but I want to do this one. Yeah, and sometimes, and because you love landscaping, you're like, and you're not a business owner, you're just like, I'm gonna go and do this, and then your accountant's like, what are you doing? You're like, shut up, I'm gonna go and do it. Well, you've got to keep it interesting because, you know, the money makers will always be there. You know, I think we worked out a while ago now our absolute perfect money makers. And I reckon they're like, and you've got to be so organized, but I reckon it's housing estates, front yard renovations, and you have to just, you know, a day or two, you know, it's done. And it's 7, 8, 9 grand.
Yeah.
And you're
and
crazy
half of that's
efficient.
profit.
Absolutely half of it's profit, you know, and you're crazy efficient. You've got all your plants sitting there, you've got your turf ordered, you've got this, that, and you kind of just put it there. And you could be on a job for 6 weeks and your margins are so much more.
Yeah, that's why I'm lucky landscaping is my hobby, but it's also an expensive hobby for me.
I had a client, I don't know, 6 months, so we'll call it, and we turned up. And, you know, she goes, your price is really high. I said, I absolutely appreciate that. And I'm sorry, but in the street, the day will be here is probably $250,000 worth of stuff just because we've got the right tool for the job. And I've got to pay for that somehow. I'm really sorry. You know, not like sorry, but it's a really professional outfit. We have the correct tool. It will be a fantastic product when we leave, but it costs money. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I have the same thing. People say it's a bit expensive, and so well, I see the amount of profit I make on these jobs. It's so expensive. So it's
funny. I've actually started sharing the quotes and the invoices and stuff with the boys, rightly or wrongly, just to give them a bit of feel. Because every now and then, you know, you'll say, you know, this job's worth 100 or this job's worth that, and sometimes they might think, you know, you're rich or you're whatever, or so it's just sort of try to keep it a little bit real. And, you know, you start working backwards from that top number and you get to the bottom one and you're like, you know, it wasn't that exciting. So I think that's probably the thing I had to learn too, because you get caught up in those numbers at the start and you're like, I want to do the biggest job out there, or I want to put the prettiest job on Instagram or whatever. And then you have kids and then you're like, well, I'm going to pay the bills.
Have you got any apps that help with the tracking that you use?
Yeah, so I use Xero. Obviously, I think a lot of people do. We've recently jumped on Slack, the app. So far, I really like it. So I will set up a job conversation. We'll name it. The quote will be in there. The job sheet will be in there. Description of what we're doing. And if we've got a plan, which is not always the case, it'll be in there too. A lot of the jobs that we do are so small that clients aren't paying for plans, which is fine. And then I'll just, you know, meet the boys and run through it. But yeah, we'll any comments throughout the day. So if I don't get to a site, which is pretty rare, the boys will put up progress at the end of the day. Or if anything's gone wrong throughout the day that needs to be addressed, and not urgent stuff, but you know, this happened today, or this didn't work, or whatever, or we found this, we need to address this with the client. It's in the conversation. So then if for some reason the client rings me, I can literally just explain without having to interpret a phone call or a text message, or because it's hard because everyone sort of understands each other differently too. I can just, you know, bring up the app and I'll be like, oh, you know what, the footing's done today. This is how the boys are doing it, X, Y, Z. And so far it's working. It only works as well as you use it.
Yep.
So I think if everyone keeps on top of it, it'll be great. But the feedback we've got from the boys is really positive. Obviously, we have a Facebook chat, which just digresses into not work too often, which is fine. It can't be serious all the time. So I think when we stay on top of that, job tracking will be easier.
And we're only couple of weeks into this year. Have you had any goals that you've set for the year?
I have, not financial goals because I don't, whatever. We don't currently have a depot. I'd really like to get one. I put an offer on one to lease yesterday. I'm very fortunate that when I bought my house, which was pre-partner, pre-kids, that I thought forward, block of land's big enough, sheds, all that sort of stuff. And it's worked out really well. But there comes a point in time where you really want to separate it. And not that it's in the way, but, I just kind of want to, be my home. So I think that's probably a goal. I'd like to do that. I'd like to focus really heavily on education this year. I think it's all well and good having a wealth of knowledge that I've learned over 12 years, but I'd really like to, instead of necessarily, and it's probably a fault of mine, expecting someone to understand that quicker than I did, really invest some time with the boys. And not that there's no issues, but just really upskill everyone. And I don't know, get a truck. That'd be cool. If it goes that way.
I like your education one because I find it hard to have a balance of teaching like the apprentices to do stuff and also getting a lot of stuff done. So there's times where you got to just get stuff done, and there's time.
I think I'm going to really actively, and if clients are listening, I'm sorry, really actively try and maybe put a day extra on a job where I can, so I can burn some time just investing back in the business. Because there's some jobs you just need to get it done, and then no one learns anything. You've kind of just, well, that's done now.
Mm-hmm.
So then you come to the next job that's exactly the same, and you go, oh, well, that's done now, and you never really get anywhere. So just because you get the job done doesn't mean anyone's improving.
Mm-hmm.
And
adding a day to a job is not going to be a massive amount either. You're not going to lose a job because of that.
No, I don't think so. I think 4 years ago I wouldn't have done that. 4 years ago I'd be really concerned about not winning every job, but making sure we've got work every single day for the vast foreseeable future. And if you quote 20, I really want to win 15 or whatever. I think we've got more flexibility now. Only, the boom is probably helping. I think that also our quality of work is really helping because Adelaide is not very big. And there's market, there's tiers of landscapers, there's jobs that Josh from LT is never going to bother with, that I'll go and do, or it doesn't matter. There's work for the whole spectrum. So, and I think we're really versatile as well. We do a lot of stuff. We do a lot of schools, do a lot of commercial stuff, do a lot of domestic. We might just go and build a wall, but we've got an opportunity to win a lot of work is probably more what I'm getting at. So now that I'm confident in that, I think we can then just start reinvesting in the boys, and not necessarily monetary wise, but just take your time. You don't have to, and not rushing, because we don't rush. I really try and afford the boys time to do everything properly. But that doesn't mean you've explained why they've done that properly. They've just done that thing. So we're really going to go back to, we've got a core book of skills that I got from Josh, early doors, and just explain, why you're using 100 mil of rubble here, or why you're using 20 mil of rubble here, or, why are you doing it like this, or what, not just do it because I said to do it. And I think I'm really going to spend this year doing that. It's going to be good practice for when the boys get older too, as in my boys. Learn some patience on a personal level, learn some humility. That's a goal for this year. Not that run around like a headless chook or whatever, but I think sometimes if you're out here and you look back in, you'd be like, you're a bit of a dick. So maybe just a bit more of that is a goal this year.
Yeah. Even if you didn't add on a day's labour to educate your staff, the sooner you do that, you're gonna start making more money from them anyway. So yeah.
Once you start thinking about it, you're like, no shit.
Yeah, I think I'm talking to myself when I'm saying that.
Yeah, and it's hard though because it's my baby. I've found it so hard to let other people control that environment, and I'm not there yet. And I hopefully will be by the end of the year. I'm giving the boys some more room for mistakes. Try. Not that, and you know, there really isn't ever anything major. Like, it never really is ever. But just stuff on details that I might do differently. And I just really need to let the boys do it their own way, because they've got to want to come to work every day too. So, and yeah, that might sound more negative than I am, but you know, I'm not a tyrant, I'm not whatever, but you know, it's hard to let go. And sometimes I'm pretty stubborn. So I'll work on that this year. I don't think this year, well, it might be. I think this year will be financial, not initially, because I think I'm just going to get really invested in the boys and things might slow down a little bit, but that's okay. Christmas rush will fix that. So, you know what I mean? Like, it'll be okay. This isn't our last year in business. I don't have to work it out now. So, still got a lot of years left before I retire, so 1 year's not going to hurt.
That's it. All right, Mitch, thank you very much for your time this evening. Really appreciate you coming on. It's good to actually talk to you as much as this is in person for the first time.
Yeah, no, it is. And I appreciate you having me on too. I hope that I've brought some value to the people that watch, hopefully open up the Adelaide space a little bit more. But no, I've enjoyed it. I've been looking forward to it since you said it the other day, to be honest. And the missus is like, just get out, go and do it. I'm like, oh, you know, gotta wait. But no, it's been great. I appreciate it. Hopefully one day we can have a beer when the borders just completely sort of open up. But no, it's been great. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thanks, Mitch.